She said, "Wow, Jeff, doing really well. You seem really busy." And I thought, yeah, I'm doing really well. I'm being busy. I learned that the word busy isn't a good word. If you're in business and you're the manager of that business and it's managing you, you've got a job. And if you left a job where you were being paid, guaranteed, turn up with no hassle apart from doing your job, and took up a job that is loads of hassle, more hours and probably lower paid hourly rate, then you're a mug. A lot of people go into business for freedom. I don't want to work for someone else. And then they find, when I start with people, they use words like, I'm in a hamster wheel, I feel like I'm in a prison. If I could leave this job, I would. The personal ownership of your own time is a gift forever in any part of your life. It's nothing to do with just business or with this business or that business. It's genuinely, arguably the biggest gift I give people.
Do you sometimes feel overwhelmed by the amount of work to be done, unsure of how to break free and reach your full potential? Well, you're not alone. Managing time is arguably the most common problem that everyone struggles with. Good time management comes from good habits, though. So what habits do we need in place, and how can we make it easier for us to adopt these? Well, our guest today is Jeff Gosling, an award-winning business coach who's here to shed light on the power of habits to transform your business. He's spent decades guiding numerous entrepreneurs to success and managed to implement a time tracking habit into his own life, which has transformed his productivity. And most importantly, he has done it every day for 4 years. So in this episode, we'll talk to Jeff about his journey from average entrepreneur, experiencing all the sorts of problems that we all experience, to top-notch coach, and particularly explore how his time tracking strategy has revolutionized his work and life, and uncover those overlooked habits that can have life-changing potential for business owners. Welcome to Destress Your Business, the podcast where we show you how to get incredible results in your business without constant stress. I'm Alexis Kingsbury, a serial entrepreneur and founder at AirManual, and I'm joined today by Jeff Gosling. Welcome, Jeff.
Thank you, Alex. That's a big build-up. Thank you very much. Great to be here.
Fantastic. Well, let's start off with what's the unique habit that's helped you most successfully navigate your journey?
Yeah, well, you've mentioned the main one. It's building the ability to stack and build habits. I think the first one, I should stress, I think we discussed this when we met. Quite often when I'm involved in sort of situations, people always look and think, oh, maybe they're different, or maybe they're special, or maybe they're just, that's their flow, that's what they're good at, and it's not really me. And we've all got this kind of thing. So I think when we spoke, I should stress that my natural flow and way of working is 100% typical of a lot of entrepreneurs, which is jumping about all over the place, very easily distracted, bored really quickly, and not great at systemized, very good at just winging it. So I thought I'd stress that first so that people understand this is not about do what I do because I'm somehow different. I genuinely believe in direct to thousands of clients that, not thousands, but certainly hundreds, but through other people that I work with, thousands. This stuff is fairly simple, not easy, and it works. And the number one thing that made the biggest difference, which you mentioned, was tracking time. That's it. Just knowing where it goes.
And so when did you start to look at time tracking as something that you felt like you needed to do? Like, talk us a bit through your journey from entrepreneur to coach, and where did that realization really start to come out?
Yeah, well, you'll hear me talk about profiling. I do, I think, a lot of work around mindset and work. So my flow is very much around people, not tasks and not process. So I'm very strong around people, and my flow is hanging out with people and connecting people. And so what tends to happen is when we get busy, we tend to get busy on the stuff we enjoy and busy on the stuff that we're good at. And we tend to put off the stuff we don't like doing, we're not very good at. And that's normal. And so busy to me would look different to busy to someone else. My busy would be, I'm in business. Busy to me is talk to more people, go out, meet people, get more clients, and it works. I built my business very quickly, won awards for it, primarily because I could get out there, see people, gain trust, and be a people person. The ticking point for me was when I started coaching. I took on board, I've got a number of frameworks and toolkits, but the primary one I started with was an action coach. And I had a kickoff action coach, lovely lady called Rachel, and their fear when they kind of launch people into the world of coaching is that we won't do anything. Whereas coming from my background of sales and building businesses through sales, I was the opposite. I have that kind of mentality of be out there. And she used these really important words, which I thought was a compliment. She said, "Wow, Jeff, you're doing really well. You seem really busy." And I thought, yeah, I'm doing really well. I'm being busy. And then it's like I learned that the word busy isn't a good word. And I was busy and I was out all the time. I was doing stuff. I was hitting all the numbers, but I wasn't working very smart. And I was working when we're under pressure, we tend to do more of what we want to do and what we think we're good at. So under pressure in a new business, I ran around meeting lots of people. Was it the most productive thing to do? Were they all relevant? Was it well planned? All the things that weren't my flow. So yeah, it really came about when I started. And prior, as I said, my instinct was always kind of work longer hours or, put it in. Work late Wednesdays used to be a little thing for me when I used to work in companies because people weren't around. So yeah, all the usual stuff. You just kind of find more hours and do it right anymore, right? And quite a lot of those hours are meeting type people and meetings and networking and getting out there, which is very time intensive.
And when you're doing those sort of time intensive activities, I suppose, as you say, like at the time it felt kind of good, right? Because you feel busy and you kind of get this regular form of feedback of, oh, it was so nice to meet you, and yeah, we must do some work together or whatever. When was the time that you really started to realize, okay, I need to change this? What were there any particular moments where you realized, because as you say, you were doing the work late Wednesday and it was becoming, we're going to be talking about habits. The habit that was being created back then was around being busy and doing more and working late and all that kind of stuff, rather than being more strategic about how you were spending your time. So how did that shift come about? What were the kind of moments that made you realize that?
Well, I am a coach. I have a coach. My coach has a coach. I mean, it's when you've got somebody on the outside looking in, it's very difficult to see yourself, right? I mean, or you can look in a mirror or in Zoom, but you really understanding what's going on, seeing yourself from somebody else's view, especially somebody who knows what they're doing, I think is one of the most powerful things. End of. I mean, the statistics back it up. Businesses failed, 80% failed in 5 years. But when you flip and have any kind of mental coaching, it flips the other way. Only 20% fail. So, I mean, it's absolutely nailed on. So it was really that process and being coached as well as becoming a coach that took me on that journey of constantly looking at how to do things differently, constant evolution. I think the driver behind that was also an element of fear. So, for example, I still work with my first client after 6-7 years, and he's a very smart guy, but don't tell him that. Staying ahead of people and not running out of stuff. It's all right to coach people for 6 months on a program or a year and then run out of stuff. When you're going to be with people on the entire journey, you've got to stay ahead of them. And that's when you've got to start working on yourself and your development and your business and your learning, and have time to coach, not just to run around getting new clients. And so, yeah, it just gets to a point where that journey and learning the systems that I use with clients and that I can show you, there's nothing complicated. That just eating my own medicine effectively. Because again, it comes down to clients. It all comes down to congruency. So one of my business core values is congruency. Don't ask clients to do anything you're not doing yourself, right?
Yeah.
Like leaders with employees. I have clients who turn around and go, "Oh yeah, I'm trying to get all my clients to do this, that, and the other in their time audits." And I'm like, "Well, where's yours?" It's just the thing. It doesn't work. I don't know why. It just doesn't work. If you can't stand there and go, "Here's the proof." You have that difference. It's like someone who's done something, they kind of convey that energy around how they've done it. And it's just different to just telling people to do the stuff that you're not doing.
Yeah, I agree. And so for this particular area, obviously, you were working late, you were struggling with how you're spending time, you were feeling busy, and it felt kind of good that you were doing those things, but you weren't working strategically. You then got coaching to help you identify, actually, this is not a good set of habits and a pattern for you. Talk us through, before we kind of go deep into what did you do and the particular habits that you put in place, what's been the impact? Like, to help us visualize, because for an entrepreneur listening, they might be thinking, well, yeah, I am a bit busy and I am a bit, I do that a bit. And I often think I could be using my time better and so on. but they don't have clear visibility of what should it look like how should they be spending their time. So think about yourself, or think about other business owners that you work with that are applying the habits that we're going to be covering today. What does it look like? How does their week look different to the average entrepreneur?
Well, I always use the word freedom. Yeah. So it feels like there's an element. A lot of people go into business for freedom. They don't want to work for someone else. And then they find, when I start with people, they use words like, I'm in a hamster wheel. I feel like I'm in a prison. If I could leave this job, I would. What a shame when they've gone into it. They've taken the risk. They've given up jobs. They've worked their backsides off for several years. It's hard. Burnout's a big deal. People give up. The failure rate between 5 and 10 years is as high as the first 5. It's not because people can't run businesses. It's just they can't keep doing it. And so it's the choice between that, which is normal, and genuinely getting out of bed and saying, oh, that's what I'm going to do today. And no, that's what I want 2 days of doing that and a day of doing that. And I don't choose people's freedom. I help them define it and I help them achieve it. But some people want to work hard and go. Most people just want the choice. It's like, when they're busy, they tell you they want to sit on a beach. I get bored on a beach in 2 days,
Yeah.
But when you're busy, it sounds nice, right? You want the choice.
I really like that concept of, it's about having the choice. It's about making the decision. Because I think sometimes when I talk on stages and so on, I often talk about, making time for what matters most. And then I become very conscious that means different things, different people, exactly as you say. And sometimes I'll talk about enjoying the journey and being able to take holiday and spend time with your family and all these sorts of things. But I think, as you say, ultimately it just comes down to that word choice. It's the fact that you can decide, rather than your week, your month, your year is written for you by the nature of the business. And I think that point that you said around talking to business leaders who have getting to that point where they just want to change what they're doing. I wish I could quit this. And yet they're building this business. And it makes me think about, I've seen that a lot with business owners where they say, oh, I hate this business. I want to quit this business.
Yeah. It's my industry. I want to do that one.
Yeah, exactly. And so they, particularly as a software entrepreneur, I see a lot of business owners that go, oh, I'd love to be in software because, and they list these various reasons why they think it looks like a more attractive industry, recurring revenues, and you're building an asset and all these sorts of things. But of course, it's got its own negatives as well. It's got data security and incident response, and lots of spend up, capital investment up front, and all these sorts of things, and retention and churn analysis. And so it's got its own negatives. But of course, how you spend your time, that bit is to some extent still the same problem, still decided by you, regardless of what industry you're in.
I agree 100%. Yes, I look at business models. I do strategy work with people. But 80% of the skill set and the knowledge and the systems around building a business, doesn't matter what the business is, that is the same. There's 20% that's flavored by the business, the sector, or whatever else. And I totally agree with that. It's just, here's the thing I hear a lot as well. I'm sure you do. It's like, no, I'm busy now, but when that project finishes, but when I got enough money to hire that person, I'll be able to. And everyone believes, and remember, it's just beliefs, and they're our evidence from the past, so we've all got them, right? So when you challenge people's belief to say, look, it's not going to be the next hire, it's not going to be the next project, because in a scaling business, it's the fundamental foundations of how you build the business. There's always going to be another person, another customer, they're just the dynamics of the scale. More people, more hassle if you don't have the foundations in place. Right? More customers, more hassle if you don't have more foundations in place.
Agreed.
And the personal ownership of your own time is a gift forever in any part of your life. It's nothing to do with just business or with this business or that business. It's genuinely arguably the biggest gift I give people.
100%. Fantastic. So I think we've set the stage well for the importance of having those foundations in place and the importance of why you want to be managing your time and using habits to do a good job of that, and what that can look like when you go down either of the potential routes. So let's dive into what are the habits or particular habit that you found most useful for getting to grips with this? What does it look like? Take us through it.
Okay, well, I mentioned one earlier. I think it's John Doerr, isn't it? What gets measured gets managed. Mm-hmm. So many people are trying to work on their time and where it goes and how they can be more productive, and they don't measure it. Well, there's only two resources. An entrepreneur's job is effectively managing two resources: time and money. That's it. Mm-hmm. And when you get the hang of that game, and it's a game with a level of risk, that's pretty much the game of entrepreneurialism. So if you think about it, hopefully, I'm a different conversation, different webinar. I focus very hard on cash as well. But from a time perspective, cash generally, as I said, I'm working with people to get finance raising. And if you've got an attractive proposition, there's money out there. People are looking for great opportunities to invest money. But you don't get time back. And in order to get more time, you sometimes need more money to get other people in and all the rest of it. Okay? But time is the one that often doesn't get measured. Even in people businesses, I mean, businesses that aren't properly tracking the time of the people that they've got in the business, and their biggest product is money, is time, right? So yeah, time is a measurement of time. There's loads of ways of doing it. I've seen all sorts of stuff. New client actually just blown me away this morning with how they've done it all really effectively through the whole team in an agency. But I start real basic. I'm old school, and I literally have a piece of paper. There it is. Just says every 15 minutes. No, I don't mean like every 2 minutes what you're doing exactly. Think about it more generically, right? What's important to you to know, right? How much do you spend sales and marketing versus this, versus coaching, versus, managing a team, versus big buckets, just chuck it in. And then if you feel that there's an area you want to focus in on, like I'm doing too much administration, then just be a bit more specific around the one you want to work on, right? So, but if you're auditing your time, a lot of people audit it, then they change things for the quarter and then audit again. I'm quite lazy. Once I've built a habit, I'm done. I don't have to build it again. Right? So the only reason I miraculously have been auditing my time since about 2018 is because if I stop auditing it, I have to have a new habit to build.
Interesting. Yeah. So you see it as easier to have a essentially daily habit than it is to have a quarterly review, even though hypothetically one might look at it and say, well, maybe I can argue that you get a similar value or whatever. And yet it takes me slightly less time if I just do it quarterly rather than daily. I suspect, firstly, that there's a good argument to say, no, daily, you're able to improve faster. But also I like the fact that you see it as it's easier when you are doing it every day. But
my habits are like cleaning my teeth. I feel uncomfortable doing them.
Yeah, it feels odd if you then haven't done it. Yeah, and I've definitely experienced that myself when I've got into a good groove on fitness with habits, and I get to the point where I'm perhaps going for decent length runs every single day or just exercising every single day. It no longer becomes difficult to motivate myself to run. If anything, I feel like slightly weird and antsy and uncomfortable if I don't. And so I've definitely seen that in other parts of my life where I've got to that point where it is easier to do it. How did you first get started with it? Because I think for a lot of people, habits are something that it takes a long time to put in. I remember seeing a statistic a few years ago where it's like it takes on average 66 days before a habit becomes something that's like easier to keep going than it is to stop it. It's like, what was your experience in the early days of starting to do some time tracking?
Yeah, well, as I said, one of the key things around coaching as well is accountability. So people always stop doing it. And a bit like you're talking about going to the gym, it's like, get a personal trainer, right? Make it easy. It's easy. But without accountability, it's really difficult because unless you really want it, which does bring to another piece we haven't touched on. So, and you also, when we talk about freedom, it's freedom for what? Okay. So that whole, when you talk about habits, a lot of it is because we all built them, right? You've got a little thing in your head called the hypothalamus or whatever. The good news is once you've got it in there, it's in there and it doesn't like not doing it. The bad news is you've got to get it in there, which is reprogramming neural pathways. And yeah, so it's like a rocket. It's like all the effort at the start and then it's easy. And so that point about, I hear so many things and I read so many books, but that whole thing around, if you've got a big enough why, you'll find a how, right? Mm. And so one of the things I start with people on is getting real clarity around what they really want, what it looks like. And so I said I'd show you a few pictures. Don't worry if you're on audio. basically, this is called the planning ladder. And again, you've heard my profile is not that of a planner, but I've learned the value of doing this. And so, in essence, you plan from the future, you get real clarity, vision boards, all those things you hear about. I help people with those things, and they're so lovely when people just go, bing, oh my God, that's what I want life to look like. And yes, it changes, but it doesn't matter. It's just setting the direction. Then you do real clear on a few 12-month goals, 1 year. Then the critical one that's often missed is quarterly planning. Every system, every business system, 13-week sprints, every single system, traction, action coach, scaling up, 10xing, doesn't matter. They're all hinged around quarterly. There's a reason for that I don't need to go into today because we're talking about time. But that gives you the bridge quarterly between quarterly and weekly 13-week sprints. And then that gets you down to daily. So that's the journey. And then if you're auditing your time, what you can start to do is plan your time. So, for example, you start to say, well, in a year's time or 5 years' time, I want my diary to look like that. Most people know what a diary looks like. This is called a default diary, which is basically, imagine you just got blocks of time. I'm doing that on a Friday, that on a Monday afternoon, that on a Thursday morning, that on a Tuesday. I don't want to do anything on a Friday afternoon, even better, right? Hopefully you're not doing stuff at the weekends. You don't need to. And so that combination of planning, which is saying, this is where I am now, which is the time audit. Where are you now? If you've got it there, you can go, what am I going to do about it? Then you go, where do I want to be? You go, where do I want to be? What does that diary look like in 5 years? What does that diary look like in 12 months? And what does that diary look like in a quarter? You go, well, a realistic stretch but achievable goal in a quarter is to get this bit of my admin moved out of me doing it and somebody else doing it. Or you start with, I've got a lot of pictures here. You start with the lowest value, easiest delegated, easiest systemizable stuff. And obviously, I can reference them to you for the systemizing and the recording and the delegating. So please do look at that because it's good stuff, right? Use tools. But yeah, that process you describe in your product is pretty much where you start. You just say, look, what's the easiest, quick? And you said it as well in your video, the kind of, you don't have to have it all perfect. It's just, what can you do each week? Start off with a few hours, a couple of hours. And then obviously as you do leveraged work, so as you systemize and delegate, systemize and recruit, as you get things off your desk, the things you hate doing the most, the things that are easiest to delegate, things that are lowest value, so low fun, call it the fun skill matrix. You don't have to see this if you're not on video, but if you are on video, it's very simple stuff. How much fun is it and how much skills required? And that usually relates to the value of it. And then over time, you just work your way up. So to the point where you're getting rid of higher skill stuff that maybe stuff you like doing, you shouldn't be doing, right? Eventually, if you want to get to the really exciting stuff. And so that flow is really how it works. But if you're not measuring your time, it's guess. One thing I'd say, and we all know this, if you think about it, right? How often do you think you've spent half an hour doing something and it's been an hour and a half?
Oh, yeah.
How often do you think you've been doing something for 20 minutes and it's been 3 hours because you really enjoyed it? Yeah, the brain is terrible at recording time. To the point when I do my time audit, if I don't write down what I did, it's very rare I can even remember what I was doing 2 hours ago properly, So it really isn't good to say, I think I know where my time's going. No, just measure it.
Yeah, I think that's really important. And I think, as you mentioned, Jeff has very kindly shared some literal piece of paper showing exactly how he does it. If you're listening to this on audio, do check out the video available at destressyourbusiness.com. But otherwise, I think you'll get the gist of most of these things. So I think to recap and therefore to sort of to look at where to take this next, we've got the starting off with what your plan is. What do you want from life? And that starts with, as you said, your 5-year goals and zooming right down through quarterly, down to weekly, down to daily. Like, what do you want to be doing? You talked about essentially your sort of what you called the default calendar, which I remember many years ago I used to call like your perfect week. What
yeah, I tend to call it a dream one when I'm talking 5 years.
Right.
An ideal one, and then kind of your quarterly one's your default, what you're going to do this quarter.
Right. So you might even create your default calendar for each of those time horizons. Like, where do you want that to be in 5 years? Where do you want that to be in a year, quarterly, and now? Okay, that's nice. So so you're not just putting the perfect week for what should it look like at some point in the future, or even what should it look like next week, but actually thinking about the stages of that so that you can see the journey that you're going on. That's really powerful. Okay, so we've got our default calendar. We've got our clarity over what we want our weeks to look like. And then, as you said, there's systemized stuff that I've spoken about on other episodes, and we've got webinars and all these sorts of things on that talk about how do you actually document and delegate the things that you don't enjoy, that aren't adding value, and so on. Now get us into that time tracking. You're doing it daily. And I agree with you that what gets measured gets done. What gets measured gets managed, and what gets managed gets done. So you've got this record that you're creating, and as you say, you're keeping up to date at least daily. Talk us through what does that look like, and we can perhaps see it, and we can describe it for those listening audio, but also what's the process of updating it look like? Like, how do we avoid getting to a point where it's like, yes, at 12:01 I updated my time tracking diary, at 12:02 I'm still writing and updating my time tracking diary? Like, how do you manage that so that it doesn't feel a distraction?
Just be very, very clear. I mean, as I said, I know people who have systems where they click what the project they're working on, and click if they're doing sales, and click if they're doing marketing. There's systems out there, there are apps out there. Absolutely. So whatever works for you. For me, I keep it real simple. I know what my diary looks like anyway. Like if I'm in a meeting like today, I'll whack, bam, doing that. An hour here, an hour there. I don't tend to work in very small blocks because absolutely we can't multitask. So one of the key things is stretching. That's what the digital diary is about. It's like stretching into bigger blocks of stuff. Get yourself immersed in something, get it nailed and move on, right? Rather than jumping about. So the other thing I haven't mentioned, as well as a time audit with clients, I often get them to do a interruptions log, okay? So quite often when I'm starting with people, once they get the flow of working in blocks and systems, it's fine. But when they're very starting, I can't measure my time because Fred's jumped on me and Deirdre wants this and Dave wants that. I said, okay, well, let's not worry about that because you're not in a position to audit your time. Your time isn't your own. So let's look at actually what's interrupting you. And so the answer to your question for me in terms of tracking it is it's only on 15-minute blocks. It's very rare I do 15 minutes of stuff anyway. It's usually half an hour. So it's like, what did I do for that hour? I was on a coaching session. What did I do for that hour? I was, set on a sales call. What did I do for that session? It's that easy. I mean, my blocks are pretty big, bit of admin, bit of client admin. It's not, difficult. So I don't go into the weeds. I keep it simple. But if you are getting into the world where it just seems like you've got so many different things going on, it's probably a sign of a problem that means you're not ready for time auditing. So you've raised a really good point. So a good story there, for example, was I said one client was being exactly that situation when I started with him. I said, right, don't bother with the time audit. I said, just track your interruptions. I said, where are they coming from? He said, they're all coming from this, but you will hear me talk about the 80-20 rule, the Pareto principle a lot, and that's very integral to what we're talking about, okay? So you can probably get a lot of the heavy lifting done, getting 20% of the stuff sorted out, right? And what usually happens is you think you're in this world of interruption, and then you actually audit it, and you realize actually there's only 4 people interrupting you. And I did this with one client, and he said, I've got these 4 people interrupting me. And I said, right, why is it those 4 people and not these other people? He said, these are in this department, these 2 departments, and these manage these departments, and these guys manage these departments. I said, how do you manage them differently? He said, I have daily morning huddles with these people. Because he prioritized sales, he prioritized other stuff, marketing, because that's his flow. He didn't prioritize ops and delivery because it was boring to him. Yeah. So what did he get? He got a load of interruptions all day from ops and delivery and all these other departments and finance because he didn't do the morning huddle with them. So we're doing the morning huddle with all 4 departments. System, you see, management systems is what you start to build in afterwards. Once you've got this nailed, you've got a default diary, morning huddle then, catch up in the afternoon, suddenly all the interruptions go. They've all got slots to talk to you.
That's so powerful. I love there so much about that. I love the interruption diary. I think it's so important because I think there's a lot to be said for often the biggest issue for us is how to get stuff done when you've got all these interruptions coming in. And actually it's not that you're doing low value, low level work often. It's that you're getting interrupted from the big important work, which increasingly needs big chunks of time to really get stuck into it. So I really like that. I also really like your point around actually any problem that you've got, in this case, getting interruptions, a really good exercise is to say, why haven't I got that problem elsewhere? And so looking at, as you say, why haven't I got that problem with these other team members? Why haven't I got that problem with that other department? To help you identify, this may be a problem you've already solved elsewhere.
You've already solved it. And sometimes it is the people, right? But that might mean coaching and development or wrong people. But I mean, you know.
Yeah, and I can see that there could have been a number of answers for that. He could have said, you know, in this case, it was, I'm not doing daily stand-ups for that team. But equally, it could have been, oh, they're all the people that are disrupting me are new and haven't been trained and onboarded and so on. It's like
inductions and all the stuff. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, or might be, as you say, they're the wrong fit, and so where they don't.
But what you're doing is it's when you've got that clarity, you see it's so lovely. People go, bing, oh my God, I've just got to do that.
Yeah.
And you go, right, there you go. All you got to do this week is put that in place. And things are better next week. It's not like it's going to be better like overnight, but every week it gets a bit better. And every week it gets easier. That's how it works. Which goes back to your point about how to build habits. You've got to see quick wins. You've got to see it improving. Knowing it's 2 steps forward and 1 step back and one day's bad and someone's on holiday and it all goes backwards. I get it, right? I'm not talking in world of perfection. But remember, you're tracking on average, are you improving?
Nice. And so for people that are currently thinking, okay, my time is not my own, we're saying interruptions diary, and presumably that's as simple as a piece of paper that every time they get interrupted and notice it, they just make a little note of what it was, or what any particular structure to that people can follow.
If anyone wants to reach out and get these documents, they can have them, seriously, right? But it is that simple. They're embarrassingly simple. It's an Excel spreadsheet with 15-minute grids on it. It's a sheet that says interruptions on it, you know. Honestly, have them. Welcome to share, you know.
Fantastic. So for the interruptions log or the interruptions diary, you'd still use that against time. So you'd look at what days and when those were happening.
Not really. No, in that instance, I'd just literally have them list them.
Okay, you would have them in the list. Okay.
I mean, I could get into the nuanced area of using some of Stephen Covey's stuff around whether this stuff is urgent, important, etc., etc. But I'm not going to go into that now. But at a base level, don't even worry about that. Who's interrupting me? Then you've got something to work with. And 9 times out of 10, you can go, well, actually, 80-20 rule. If I get these 2 people sorted out, most of my interruptions go.
Yes. Yeah, and often it's, you know, sometimes it's a case of, oh, it's that person, but often in my experience, it's not. It's that they unreasonably have been left to their own devices on some particular task, often one that you find boring and don't like, which is why you've completely underdone the amount of setting of foundations and so on.
Yeah. I mean, it's common nature. If you're brilliant in sales and you're running a business, you're going to be all over the sales team, right?
Yeah.
If you come from a technician background and you're the lawyer and you're the best lawyer in the business, then it's going to hold you back from being the best leader, because you're going to do the legal work and jump over the legal work instead of becoming the best leader and coaching and developing the best lawyers behind you.
Yeah, true. So let's say, we've got the interruption log for, okay, we've got these things that are destroying my day and meaning my time is not my own. We've then got, okay, once we've addressed some of the interruptions, we can then do time tracking to look at what does my diary look like in reality, essentially, versus my default calendar or my dream calendar, my ideal week calendar. How often are you updating that? As you say, it's in 15-minute blocks. Are you doing it as you go along through the day?
I just do it as I go. I just scribble it down as I go. Yeah. In real time, you can't look back and say, what did I do this morning? I'd have forgotten.
Yeah. Okay. So you're doing it in real time. So it's like almost as part of, okay, what do I need to do next? You're also capturing what have I just done.
Bingo.
Okay. Yeah. Fantastic. Which I suppose means even on its own makes you more intentional about how you're about to spend the next 15 minutes.
When you've got a high propensity to distraction and when you've got a gap and you're thinking, what should I do next? When you've got your sheet of what you're going to do that day, which we haven't come on to, but most people understand the concept of a daily sheet. Yeah, we'll come on to the weekly and daily stuff. But once you've got, that's what I've got to get done, and I've got 15 minutes, you go, oh, I'll do that in this 15 minutes. And it's far easier than sort of, you know. And also you feel the 15 minutes and half an hour's drifting when you're doing something unproductive. It's a really good way of just keeping yourself on track.
Nice. And do you block out the things that you know you're going to have to do, like, for example, a podcast interview in advance, or do you only put that in like once it's happened and how long it took and so on?
Yeah, good question. I just do it as I go. Like after this, I'll go boom, bop, bam, done. Takes me.
Nice. Okay.
I don't even think about it. Yeah.
Fantastic. So let's imagine we're capturing that, and honestly, like I probably haven't shared this that much on this podcast actually. That firstly, I'm autistic. I tend to struggle with distraction a lot, and it's something that I've had to work with throughout my life. And there's various things that I do, time blocking in my calendar and all these sorts of things. But it is something that I often struggle with, and then I'll put habits in place and drop those habits, and I find it difficult. This feels to me like something that's like, okay, I want to give this a go and use this myself after this. So as a result, it makes it quite helpful for me to look through exactly what I'm doing. Right, so I've got this diary and I'm recording it. What do I do next? Because I can already see there's value about being more intentional about how I'm spending my time and doing a log of what I'm doing. How often would I then reflect on that? Is that a daily, a weekly?
Yeah,
When am
that's
I
the
looking and
weekly piece.
what questions am I asking?
Yeah, that's the weekly piece. So when you've got clarity, we talk about time mastery, but I think it's associated to clarity mastery, okay, which is not often mentioned. So this planning piece, this thinking piece, thinking is so important. What do I really want? Where do I want to be? What's really important? These things are really important. Otherwise, why bother at first? And how do you know what's important, right? And so that 13-week goal in line with your future, and that's a reasonable amount of time to make some proper change in something, your personal development, your business, your sales, your whatever. And when you've got clarity around that, you just do weekly. And then weekly, you'll say, well, what things are the most, you're choosing what to do that quarter as the most important thing. Again, Stephen Covey talks of rocks and pebbles and sand and water and how you fit it all in. You put the rocks in first. So this is about saying the most important stuff goes in the diary first. You just say, right, my way of doing that, because I'm a simple chap, was to say Friday. I really like the idea of getting out of bed on a Friday and it being different to the rest of the week.
Mm-hmm.
So I embedded Fridays being mine. Just built a business around not working Fridays as far as meetings and sales and blah, blah, blah is concerned. So I go up on a Friday and do what you like. I mean, different people, different ideas. Some people like doing stuff in the evening. Some people like doing it in the morning. I don't really mind. 20 minutes a day of reading. I don't care. I know that on Fridays, I'm going to get out of bed in the morning and it's going to look different. And now I've got it to Thursdays. You see? And so that's the flow. And if you do that weekly, what you're doing is you're reflecting weekly. I use a focus sheet with clients. And it's pretty simple stuff. What are you going to do is your top priorities for the week, and did you do them? And there's a little reflection exercise underneath that says, like, how are you doing against your quarterly goals? What was a good thing? What was a bad thing? What do you need help from me? How many hours did you work? How many hours do you work on leverage work? How motivated are you? How much learning you're doing? So it's a little list of KPI, key performance indicators, that just get people thinking. And then over time, week by week by week, when I do my reflection, I just get my timesheet. Again, if you've got it all done automatically, it will put it all in the buckets for you, right? I did this much sales, this much marketing, this much coaching. I sit down literally every week. And there's a trait of highly successful people is to do a bit of reflection on a Sunday. I see my coach 7 a.m. on a Monday. So I tend to do mine on a Sunday. Very simple stuff. Sit in front of the telly. Sometimes just totting it up. How much sales how much coaching, how much admin, how much travel, how much whatever. Very easy. And then I put it into a little spreadsheet. Again, Excel, not very complicated. And then you put it in and then it sort of tallies it up over the quarter. That's it. So I can see quarter by quarter, which is when I do my real reflection. Okay. And you can see, like all good key performance indicators, oh my God, my learning's down.
Nice.
Now, if your learning's down, you won't notice today, right? You've just had a couple of hours to do some selling. But you will notice it's a negative impact in the future of your business. If you're not doing enough selling, if you're a sales role, I mean, hopefully you're not, hopefully you've delegated, but if you are the sales guy and you're not doing enough selling, you might have enough work in the bank now. That might be why you're busy, why you're not selling. But if you ain't doing enough selling, you're going to have a problem in a couple of months' time.
Yeah. And so I can absolutely see the power of, once you've got that, as you say, you essentially end up with a dashboard around your time, which is really rare and normally incredibly difficult to do. But as you say, particularly when you built it on a foundation of updating it every day and keeping it, tracking your time live, that makes it then possible to do. And particularly, I love the fact that we've already explored how this is a useful activity that you get value and quick wins from as you're doing it. Never mind the fact that you've then got data that you can then review.
When I do this first time with clients, and I say, okay, what about bam, 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 bam? I've never had a client yet, even before I've got back to, even before I've seen them again, they've just gone boom.
Yeah.
Can't believe how much time I've been doing that. And then you can start to work on the real productivity hacks, real small stuff. For example, someone says, I'm doing a lot of work on emails. Why is that? Well, people send me emails, I have to email them back and I write them all out. And you start to think, templates, repetitive, systemization. And then you start to get into quicker modes. Well, how about we just drop people? I get people asking me stuff, clients and things, and I used to sit and write articulate answers. It's taking quite a lot of time. I go, client admin's quite high. Why am I doing all that? I just send them WhatsApp voicemails now. I literally say what I want to say in a minute and bam. But all that thinking and doing things differently doesn't happen if you haven't got the underlying thing that says, you're spending too long doing emails.
Nice. Yeah, I really, really like that. And so what's then next? We're doing our review. We've got our dashboard. We're able to do our weekly reviews, our quarterly reviews. We're identifying how we want to improve things. What have you seen as being perhaps some of the biggest impacts for people when they've got that habit in place? And perhaps it's for you, perhaps it's for your clients. Like what then happens to them? Like, because is there a risk, for example, that they then drop that habit? Like having made some of the big pains?
Absolutely. Oh, absolutely. I mean, I'd say I was a bit of a freak in terms of doing it all the time. Most people do it. I've explained why I do it all the time. It's not because I'm clever. I think it's easier. But if you go back, I did all this many years ago, but then I was lucky to see a guy called James Clear live on Atomic Habits. And so anyone who is looking at how to build habits, the way to do habits, the process of undoing bad habits, just read James Clear, follow James Clear, because he's articulated, there's been lots of books on this, but he's articulated it very well. It's a very easy, well, simple, not easy. None of habit building is easy, but it's simple. And so I work on a basis of habit stacking. And so I've worked out that my discipline runs out at about 4:00. So anything I've tried to discipline myself on after that time is a really hard habit to build. I'm very good in the morning. And so I can build habits, exercise, stretch. Once you've got a little rhythm going, like cleaning your teeth, washing your face, having a shower, you just add them on. And once you've already in a little system of habits, I get to like 8:00 in the morning and I've already done most of my habity type stuff that has to be done. It's mind blowing. I mean, there's books out there, loads of books about the importance of the morning and all that good stuff. But I do believe for most people that if you start the day well with a good morning routine, and that chunk of time, I used to capture doing these things as working on my business. But then I got upset because I was working too many hours and I realized it wasn't really working. I was just doing stuff I should, now it's habit. I don't even class it. It's getting up,
Nice. Yeah. And so I think I can see so much value in it. And I'm sure that people listening see that value too. I want to make sure that we've pushed this over the line so that anyone who gets this and is like, yeah, I see the value and so on, I want to push it over the line so they actually put it in place. Because my suspicion is that, using Pareto before, 80% of the audience will go, I absolutely love it. And then they go away and they don't put it in place. And then maybe 6 months later, they maybe, see your face somewhere or someone else talks about time tracking. They go, oh yeah, there was that episode. I thought that was really good, but I didn't put it in place. I want to make sure that we're the other way around. I want to make sure that 80% of people listening are now going, you know what? I see the value in why I'd want to be doing this time tracking activity, why time is my most valuable resource and what I want to put in place. How do we make this super easy? And it might be that that you can think of a client that you've worked with that really dragged their heels or really struggled with this, and you can perhaps talk us through what was it that made the leap, or perhaps we can break down into some very specific steps that we want people to do while they're listening to put this in place.
Yeah, well, that's why I referenced Atomic Habits. But you're right, a lot of people won't read or watch Atomic Habits, so I'll give you the gist of it, okay? Most people set off to build a habit and then they get really upset when they fail. When I do it with clients, you've got accountability, so get an accountability buddy, partner, whatever, okay? Number one. make it fun. But also, just think, well, when you learn about building habits, it's about looking at what you are doing better, not the fact that you're not doing it perfectly. So it took me 7 months with a coach to get down to daily planning from weekly. I got to weekly pretty quick, but I just couldn't get my head around. I couldn't do it in the evening. Now I'll do it all in one go, and I'm only this kind of sheet of what you're going to do that day. Okay. So, it isn't, I'm not sitting there saying this is, most of my clients, I start with them and now I'm done that. Fine. Well, until you get clarity that they want it, they really want the outcome, then, and I can give you examples of so many clients. I can't really share screen, but if anyone wants, I can send you some videos of clients that have literally said, my God, in a year, I went from working 70 hours a week, believing that's what entrepreneurs have to do to build a business, looking after clients, team problems, etc., etc., etc. 1 year, bam, I'm now the CEO of the company. Other people are doing stuff. I didn't think that was possible. I'll send you the video.
Yeah.
Now, actually, one of those clients went from 70 hours a week doing what we all normally do to try and build a business. The reason people reach out, this is the trigger point. Okay. You can lead a horse to water. The trigger point is you don't have any more time, or you can't keep doing this level of time. So there'll be people on there quite happy doing 40 hours, 50 hours, thinking this is all right. It sounds like a good idea, but I'm okay. This kicks in when people don't have a choice. The choice is keep doing what you're currently doing and you're going to burn out. You're going to fail like most business owners. Or do it like this. Or some way, but this is the way it works. I haven't found a better way. And when you get clients who just say, oh my God, I've got one runs a business in London, lives in Belfast. Used to have to come and go all the time. Now they don't. Another one lives in a ski resort in France, comes over once a month. Amazing. This isn't just, log my time and I'll be a bit more efficient. I get more work done. No. As I said earlier, this is choice, freedom. If you're in business and you're the manager of that business and it's managing you, you've got a job. And if you left a job where you were being paid, guaranteed, turn up with no hassle apart from doing your job, and took up a job that is loads of hassle, more hours and probably lower paid hourly rate, then you're a mug.
I love that. What a brilliant, that is such a good key takeaway to land on. That's awesome. Thank you so much, Jeff. It's been so good getting your insights on this. I hope people really implement this in their days, in their weeks and months. How can people learn more about you and hear more from you, Jeff?
Generally out there is Jeff R. Gosling. There's a company called Jeff Gosling. So yeah, Jeff R. Gosling on LinkedIn, or jeff@jeffrgosling.com. So JEFF. But yeah, just reach out if you want the tools, if you want to watch videos. I've got stuff that shows all this in little videos, whatever you want. It's genuinely, please don't work more hours than you need to.
Love that. Fantastic. Well, thank you so much, Jeff. It's been absolutely great talking to you. I'll share links in the show notes, but otherwise, to everyone listening, please implement what Jeff has shared. You're going to get huge savings in your time and ultimately be able to spend more time on what matters most. But otherwise, Jeff, thanks so much for joining me. It's been really great having you on the show.
My pleasure, and thanks for bringing me on.
And to everyone else, if you're looking to free up your time and scale your business and systemize the sorts of things that we've been talking about to be able to delegate more effectively, to be able to get your team trained up and onboarded really quickly so that you're not having to deal with a load of interruptions like we talked about with Jeff, then you'll get a lot of value by watching the recording of a masterclass that I ran on how to free up 15 hours per week and unlock your growth. You can find out more and get access for free at airmanual.co/webinar. One final thing before you go, if you found the content today valuable, and I'm sure you did, then take a minute, hit the like button, subscribe, leave a review, post about it on social media. Just one of those, please, as it'll help the episode get more visibility. It'll help more people, and I would hugely appreciate it. And so would Jeff. So please do that. And actually, what would be really, really good for, particularly for this episode, is post on social media with how you used your time differently as a result of implementing what you've learned in this episode. It'd be really, really nice to see it. Tag me in, that's at Alexis Kingsbury or whatever in whatever social media tool that you're using, but would really love to hear it, and I'll pass it on to Jeff as well. But otherwise, until next time, have fun.